Okay, so I'm on a bit of a roll here this evening with doing videos. So some tips and tricks I've learned for dogs. If dogs have eye problems, generally, like you see the pussy bits around their eyes, you can use human eye drops, gentamicin antibiotic eye drops, just from any pharmacy. Use the human ones, and 2 drops twice a day for 10 days will usually clear that up. And people can buy that themselves. Play with the dog's face a little bit, and then pop 2 drops in. Sometimes they'll drip in. It can be hard to get it into the dog's eyes, so that will clear up most eye problems. I'll also give a deworming tablet if I see that, and also skin medicine because they can affect the eyes too. So they can itch a lot and inflame the eye and get an infection in their eye, and flies. I think flies can lay eggs and stuff in there. So I like to, if I'm doing that treatment, and maybe you're talking to an owner who is concerned about the dog's eye, that's something that they can do. Or if you're passing it every day, you can do it, and even doing it for a bit can make a big difference. But I would also deworm and also give the skin treatment. Carrying, so on to the next one, carrying a knife or a scissors. A knife is handy for chopping medicine to the correct size anyway. Scissors is useful. You can use a knife, but you have to be careful if the dog has a tight collar or something, a tight red ribbon around its neck. I'll always, with a friendly dog, I'll always just check, and you get 2 fingers comfortably in the collar. If not, it's too tight. If I can, I adjust the collar, and if I can't, I chop it off. And then I discuss it afterwards with the people. I do it first because that's an emergency situation, and that doesn't need to be discussed with anyone if a living being is choking because of a collar. So I'm cautious with how I put the scissors. I probably don't put the scissors here, right? If the dog moves, I might put the scissors there, and I'm careful maybe away from the spine, or especially with a knife. So if the dog does move, and I will have one hand on the dog's neck like that, so to avoid the dog accidentally nipping me. And also with handling dogs, that's always a good idea. Next one is, if you do get a nip from a dog, it's more likely to happen with giving food, and the dog's too eager to get the food and they nip your hand. That's most likely. Immediately, sunlight, the soap and water, just directly go to a sink, directly walk into a family compound, to a shop, sunlight, water, immediately do it. And if you got someone with you, tell them to go and buy Bentadine at an Apothec, and then you can pour the iodine, the liquid one, you can pour that directly into the wound, and that should take care of any rabies. You do not run to the doctor's surgery to get a vaccine straight away. You can do that afterwards. But if you go directly with soap and directly with Bentadine, you will kill any possible, and a very, very slight chance the dog has rabies or wasn't vaccinated and you're worried that it might have it. And then what you do is you feed the dog for the next couple of weeks. If the dog looks fine, you then, after 10 minutes of washing that wound carefully and washing and putting the Bentadine in if you can. I mean, the soap itself is probably enough. Then you go back and check on the dog. If the dog's healthy and fine, or maybe the dog's vaccinated, and you can ask the owner, and I tried to find when it was vaccinated. And you don't need the vaccines. If you've been vaccinated previously, you need less vaccines. If not, you can go to BIMC Ubud, and I do recommend that. You can get vaccinated in advance. The vaccine lasts a year. If you want to, if you have opinions about vaccines, that's okay, but at least follow the washing guidelines, and that should deal with it. So that's the thing, to know that you can deal with it right then and there and not get too worried about it. It's pretty rare. If we see a dog in very bad condition and we have coconut oil with us, or access to coconut oil, while the dog's eating, you can just pour the coconut oil, pour it on its back. Be careful, the coconut oil will run. If we're doing up in the head, the coconut oil may run down into the eyes. We don't want to hurt the dog's eyes. So if the dog's friendly and we're rubbing it on, maybe we have the residue, and if there's a little bit here, but we're cautious, it will drip, so only a little bit there, preferably around here and in the ears. And coconut oil really speeds up the healing. It's really, really good. It's really effective. Another tip is check if the dog has clean water. Especially if we've given a lot of dry food and we've given a dewormer and we give them that stuff. We'd say to the family, look, it's a good idea if they have more food later, and we make sure they have access to clean water. And I also use the fact that I've given skin medicine, I've given a deworming tablet to the dog to encourage the family to feed it more food. Say, we're going to have a beautiful dog here within a couple of weeks. Let's give it lots of food. Let's give it plenty of chicken bones and chicken and stuff like that. And also regarding bones, the dogs need to eat bones to survive here. That's the reality. So they're usually pretty skillful at avoiding them. If I'm cooking with chicken backs or whatever, I'm careful to break the bones, but with and making them smaller. But because those bones are pretty lethal, if the dog's not careful, the dog will probably be okay because they're experienced with it. But chicken heads, you don't have that issue. All the bones are soft, so there's no issue there. You can even give them to puppies. Another thing I might do is get marrow bones. If I see a dog's going to be in a vet for a while, it can make the dogs a little bit constipated, but so the dog has something good to do. A good tip is a Pepito. In the freezer section, they have marrow bones, and that's a good thing to give puppies. If you have a rescue puppy and you're worried it's gonna chew stuff anyway, the teeth are growing, the teeth are itchy, it needs something to chew, so give them those. Or dried coconut husk is great. They can pull it apart, they can make a good mess of something that is fine, it's easy to clean up, and it's not causing destruction to wooden furniture. If you do have wooden furniture around, you might want to spray vinegar, a vinegar water 50-50 mix, and spray it around so they get in the habit of not chewing stuff, so you don't end up with problems with your landlord or problems with your own furniture as well. With puppies, if we ever come across puppies, straight away we're looking at the legs, looking at the condition of the legs. The biggest priority with puppies is puppy milk. If there's no mother around, if it's been dumped, we don't know when it last had milk. We want to give it some milk, and puppy milk is very cheap. If you are completely stuck and you've no option, maybe eat some cow's milk and mix it in with chicken. It may give it a little bit of diarrhea with cow's milk, but there's a big concern and a big problem with the legs bend, and then they have to splint the legs, and you have to be careful the bandages don't get wet, the dog's not too active, and then the dog needs, especially goat's milk with colostrum powder is really wonderful. So I think if you're going around helping dogs regularly, I think it's good to have a supply of that with you at home. Another thing, there is a blue wound spray, you can look it up, and it's like an aerosol spray that's really effective on open wounds. It's really, really good. Dogs don't like being sprayed, and if you spray a dog, you might have a difficulty catching the dog again. You want to sweeten the deal with some chicken before and after, and in future. Some dogs may not mind, but a lot of dogs are very, very sensitive to that. And also, it's a good way if a dog's been a bit of a nuisance. You can encourage people, maybe if they have to get the dog away from the property, to spray it with water. Bally dogs generally hate water. Another thing is people often overwash their dogs, so it's always good to ask people, how often do you wash the dog? If you're not familiar with why it has a skin problem, that's often the cause. With well-loved dogs, that's often the cause, and just encourage them not to wash the dog. Another thing is Shih Tzus don't generally shed, and the Shih Tzu type dogs here. So if you have a scissors with you, you can always cut off a few mats. You can get some nice brushes and stuff, and then do it with the owner and have fun with the owner. And I've had great fun. People, like, the dog is looking really rough. It's just completely covered in mats. But the people were lovely, and they all helped me. In the household guys, like in their 20s, they just never thought of chopping the hair off the dog. And so we sat around, had fun. 15 minutes later, all the hair is chopped off the dog. The dog now doesn't have 2 kilograms of matted hair on it. And the Shih Tzus tend to be very chilled out for that. But obviously, you're being careful that the dog doesn't reach around to snap you. You want to make the dog comfortable. So that's another benefit to having the scissors there. Or if they have big mats on their tail and stuff, sometimes they don't like you touching the tail. They might be more likely to snap, so be aware of that. But that's always a good intervention. I like having the brush with me as well, especially the friendly dogs I've fed many times. I can often brush them, and I'll even sometimes, they don't really like being brushed against the grain of the hair, but it really removes the hair. And I try to do that when I see street dogs that I know and that trust me, and I try to make sure that I remove that layer of hair from them as best I can. I can do it with my hand. The hand often gets a bit mucky. I have to wash very quickly afterwards. And if I'm using a brush on a few dogs, I try to clean it in between or leave it out in the sun under the UV to sterilize it, because we don't want to be spreading parasites or fungal infections between dogs. And that's another thing with puppies. If we come across a set of puppies and we have been petting other dogs that may not be vaccinated, we don't want to spread disease from one dog to another. So it is best not to touch the puppies at that point unless you've really washed your hands. And some of the things can stay in your clothes as well. If you've been around other dogs that aren't vaccinated, try to be conscious. We don't want to spread any extra problems onto puppies. You know, they have it tough enough, and if they're healthy where they are, then we don't want to be introducing parvo or distemper or stuff they can catch from other dogs. So that's another helpful trick. And when we see puppies, it's often very good to deworm them. Also, when we are helping dogs for families, you know, you one dog who's itchy may be worried you're coming with food, it goes into the compound, you go into the compound and there's 10 itchy dogs. So we have an opportunity to have some discussions with the family around how they can treat all the dogs for skin problems, around sterilizations, and maybe we have options for them with sterilizations. We give that information and we try to make the contact then and there so that they make the phone call then and there, because they'll just say, hey, and then they won't actually do anything. So we try to get that process started if we can. So there's some of the tips and tricks. With feeding dogs, we're careful that we don't get the dogs out onto the road. We're cautious that other dogs will attack other dogs. And if we're really confident with dogs, I'll have my 800-gram bag of dog choice. You know, you can whack it off your leg. It doesn't hurt at all. But if a big bully dog is attacking another dog, I have no problem giving him a big whack with that bag. It makes a lot of noise and it scares them off a bit and it stops the fight. So I'll do that. I don't recommend, unless you're very confident with dogs, to do that, but I'd rather do that. I mean, the Bally dogs tend to make a lot of noise with their but don't generally do that much damage. So don't be too off put by that. And if you feel very confident and relaxed, give the instigator of the fight a good whack with the bag of dog choice from your hand, and be careful doing it. But I use that very regularly to break up fights over food. And so also, if you have somebody with you, maybe you distract the boss dogs while you treat the dog that needs it, and you're careful around medicine, that maybe you don't treat the boss dog right away because the boss dog's likely to steal the food from the other dog. So, and also carrying medicine with you where you go. That's very handy because then you don't have to go back. You may not find the dog. Don't bother texting other people about dogs you're not willing to treat yourself. Put the effort in and do it yourself. Other people have lots going on, and it's very annoying for getting lots of requests to treat dogs, you know. And you may have seen dogs yourself that day who are in more desperate need, and you get a text from somebody. It puts you in an awkward situation then when you have to relay that information to the person. Nobody needs it, so take responsibility for helping the dogs. You can help yourself and request information, but don't be pressurizing other people to do stuff you're not willing to do yourself. And try to act independently. Try to get the medicine yourself. Try to get the food yourself. Try to act independently unless you have the consent of the person to work in tandem. You know, if there's a street feeder and you're doing skin medicine, that's fine, but make sure that the person has agreed to that first before you hit them with requests, because that can be quite annoying. The person then has to say, hey, I'm not your butler, I'm not here to be managed by you, and nobody wants to have those conversations. So by being independent, by being reliable, by being responsible, and by doing things yourself, it feels good, and everybody loves you when you behave like that and you don't cause other people stress. And so that's very useful. And when we see the condition of dogs in a family compound, we may do a check and make sure we fill up a bowl of fresh water, so at least the dog has fresh water there. Maybe we clean the bowl and we show a good example. And sometimes I'll leave bags of dog choice with families, you know, to try to make sure the dog has nutrition for a while, and maybe it might encourage them to do it themselves then in future. Aloe vera is very helpful. The locals have access to cheap local coconut oil, Minyak Kalapa Asli it's called. It's fantastic for all skin problems. And aloe vera as well. Sometimes they grow aloe vera. The aloe vera is not messy, so it's a really handy one, but it's nowhere near as effective as the coconut oil. But the dogs tend to prefer that. The dogs can eat coconut oil. They're going to lick it off themselves anyway. It's very healthy for the dog. It's fine. You may sometimes come across people using motor oil and stuff like that, so you tell them to wash it, and you tell them not to be an idiot using motor oil. You can even use leftover cooking coconut oil if they have to. If they're stingy and they're not willing to pay for it, but using motor oil and stuff. At least they're trying. I'll give them credit for at least they're trying. But I've seen that a few times, and I just laugh at them, and in a nice way, and encourage them to use coconut oil. And so I can't think of any other tips or tricks, but yeah, using chicken heads, and you can, if dogs are very shy, you can always throw a bit of chicken first so the dog knows it's getting chicken. With certain dogs who are very sketchy, you may only get one opportunity, so you might have it prepared. You might have the medicine prepared in a chicken head or wrapped in a chicken liver, and as you drive by, you just throw it down and you drive on, and you don't worry about getting a photograph, and you don't worry because the dog's going to run. And at least you've treated the dog, you've helped the dog. A lot of the time, the worst dogs are the ones that are the trickiest to treat, and maybe you might get a photo from a distance or something, but the most important thing is the dog gets the medicine that it needs. So that's handy. You can always get the medicine from the pet shop, but getting it from the Timbal Jaya place is better. You can get it from Shopee, Tokopedia, Lazada. You can order it. Best have the medicine yourself, best have the medicine with you. And that's all. You can check around for prices, but always buy the biggest one, and then you divide it. And I love Mectin. Mectin's just fantastic. It's ivermectin. Another thing is you'll often get the local family to say they had the vet out and the vet gave an injection and the dog should be fine. They gave an injection of ivermectin. It's like just as efficient to give it orally, and so you have the tablets there. But it's really the Simparica or the NexGard or Bravecto that are going to clear up all the skin problems. So that's why a lot of kind people don't get the dog the cure that the dog needed, because the vet has given the wrong medicine. Sometimes the vet will say the dog has an allergy. I don't buy this allergy stuff. The dog might have an allergy if it's been overwashed, but other than that, it probably does. These dogs do not have enough food to have the time to develop skin allergies and stuff. So it'll typically be a fungal problem, and they should be rubbing coconut oil on the dog daily. You got to be careful if there's old people, if there's a woman with a child, you don't want them to slip. And if the dogs are up on tiles, sometimes coconut oil will make them slip. So we just have to be careful of that, but it is extremely effective for fungal problems and for bacterial problems. And so, yeah, also you can use cat food. Cat food generally has more protein. You can use tuna cat food, you can use whatever, it's fine, totally fine for dogs. They have a thing here saying that the dogs are allergic to fish, but that's probably a skillful thing to be cautious of because of the bones in fish, but they're not allergic to the fish, it's the bones that are extremely dangerous for dogs. So sometimes the cat food is great because it's got so much protein in it, and the dogs love a change. The dogs love a change of food. It's also sometimes a good measure if you put down white rice. If the dog wolfs the white rice, that dog is hungry. If dogs are picky about food, often at warungs, the dogs will be picky about food. They're used to getting bits of chicken, so if you're giving medicine, you're going to have to give it in some delicious food. If a dog's hungry, you can put down the Simparica by itself. It's going to eat the Simparica. And anyway, a lot of dogs will just eat the Simparica themselves. Another tip is don't walk directly at dogs. Ignore the dog. Drop the food down as you walk by. Don't even look at it. And then after it's eaten, then go back and don't give too much food right away. You want the dog to eat the medicine if you're giving medicine. So make sure it's eaten. It's enough food to get its attention. It can see it and eat the medicine with it. And then afterwards give it lots of food, but maybe not so much that it would make it sick. And we might give more nutrient-dense food to dogs who are underweight. And a handy one is, a really good one is that people often overlook. You can go and buy raw eggs. Raw eggs are full of good vitamins and protein and good fats for dogs. So, and it's always easy to find a plastic container. You can fill up a plastic container for a street dog, put down a few eggs. They don't really go for sardines, but tin of tuna they will. And if you got to give medicine, usually dogs go crazy for tuna. So that's always a good option if you haven't got anything else around. Or chicken and rice. Go to a warung, get some chicken and rice for the dog. And like I said, just put down a little bit at first so the dog's had the medicine, or if you're giving it a meal, to do that. And yeah, that's all I can think of with a few tips and tricks for helping the dogs right now. But no doubt, as soon as the video is over, I will think of other stuff that I should have said, so I might do a follow-up. Okay.